The sound that shattered the mansion's silence was laughter. Bright, bubbling laughter rising from the pool, the one place James Carter had avoided since Emily's funeral. He froze on the travertine path behind his glass-walled home in Malibu, the Pacific winking beyond the cliff, a California breeze threading through eucalyptus and salt. That laughter didn't belong in this house anymore. Not after the year they'd had. Not after two small boys in wheelchairs had forgotten how. He followed the sound like a man chasing a memory and stopped at the sliding doors. Steam lifted from the heated water. And there, Lord, there was Alia Johnson, the new caregiver the agency sent from Georgia, waist-deep in the pool, holding his 5-year-old twins as if she'd been born for this moment and not hired for it. Liam and Noah wore handmade foam belts, little rocket fins stitched in glitter thread, and Alia's voice cut through the air with the rhythm of a countdown. 3, 2, 1. Launch! Small legs kicked water. Small hands sliced surface. And for the first time in forever, two boys laughed without looking over their shoulders for permission. James, a 34-year-old tech founder who could bend code and capital to his will, pressed his palm to the glass as if it were the only thing keeping him upright. Numbers and negotiations he understood. Joy, this wild, unmeasured thing, he did not. Since the night the ocean turned on him and took his wife, the Carter house had breathed in and never quite breathed out. Dinner was quiet. Therapy was scheduled. The pool was decoration. Laughter, a rumor. Alia didn't see him right away. She kept her body between both boys so each could float. Captain Liam, starboard. Captain Noah, port, she grinned. Soft southern cadence tucked inside each word. Not shy, not loud. Steady. Arms out, pilots. Feel the water hold you. Noah's voice, long rusted from disuse, stumbled out a soft echo. Hold. Liam shot a splash at her chin. She puffed her cheeks, blew a cloud of bubbles, and both boys squealed. The sound corkscrewed straight through James's ribs where grief and guilt had built their fort. He remembered California nights when Emily taught lullabies by moonlight in the nursery, now a sealed room at the end of the hall, door shut like a wound. He remembered promising therapists he would follow every chart, build every ramp, spare no expense. He remembered how failure felt like stillness. And now this stranger, this woman with a tired ponytail and glitter thread under her nails, had slipped an oar into their stagnant water and stirred it back to life. Alia finally turned. She didn't flinch. She didn't apologize for the noise. She lifted one wet hand, an open palm invitation that asked nothing and offered everything. This belongs to you too. James hesitated at the threshold, hearing the old voices. Be careful. Control the variables. Don't promise what you can't protect. But another voice, quieter and older than fear, whispered from wherever love goes when it thinks it has died. Breathe. Walk in. For women who have lived enough life to know that miracles often arrive wearing work clothes, this is the moment that tastes familiar. He stood outside the happiness he paid for, and a woman he barely knew was teaching his sons that safety could feel like motion, not walls. It wasn't romance. It was rescue. It wasn't therapy metrics. It was muscle memory of trust returning to small shoulders. Again, Noah chirped, surprising himself. Again, Alia nodded. But this time we land on the moon. The moon? Liam asked, wary but game. Every pool's got a moon if you know where to look, she answered, gaze flicking past the water to the dark hallway where a closed door waited. And every house remembers how to laugh once somebody opens a window. James stepped inside. The tile warmed his bare feet. The boys turned toward him, not scared, not pleading, simply aware, and he saw something he hadn't seen since Malibu felt like home. Anticipation, not dread. He swallowed hard. If he spoke, he might beg the moment not to break. So he didn't. He let it crest and carry them, to the neighbors in the bluffs above, folks like Caroline Whitmore, who scheduled her hydrangeas the way other people schedule prayer. This would look improper. A caregiver in the pool, glitter on belts, laughter unmeasured. But the women who watch our channel from kitchens in Texas, porches in New Jersey, apartments in Miami know better. When heartbreak has been king too long, laughter is not a luxury. It's proof of life. And sometimes God sends proof wearing discount store sneakers. There would be consequences. There always are when joy returns to a house that gave up on it. whispers from the HOA, a clipboard at the door from Child Services, a specialist with polished shoes and polished theories, Dr. Huxley, arriving to downgrade what he cannot quantify. There would be a storm that snaps the power and pins a small family between floors in a metal box, and a song that was once a mother's would have to be remembered by a stranger with a brave heart. There would be a locked nursery, a sheet of music titled Moon Lullaby, and a choice no contract can define: who belongs and who is merely employed. But tonight, the introduction is simple. The widowed father with more money than sleep hears his sons laugh again. A young woman who has held other people's babies in other people's kitchens steps into a Pacific blue pool and teaches two boys to float, not away, but toward. James watched Alia lift her hand. "Last run," she said. "We launch." And we wave to the woman on the moon. "Mommy?" Liam whispered, the syllables fragile as glass. Alia didn't answer for him. She tipped her head toward the sky, letting the boys find their own names for hope. James found his breath, and with it the tiniest heresy against grief. He wanted more. Tonight's theme is simple and weighty. How a house learns to breathe again, told with the gentle courage of a woman who keeps showing up and a father who must choose between managing pain and risking joy. If you've ever protected your heart so fiercely that you forgot how to hear laughter, stay close. The pool is only the first door. I'm John Parker, and today's story will touch your heart. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and give your like. It's very important to me, and leave in the comments which city or country you are listening to me from. Morning crept through the glass walls of the Carter estate, slow and golden, yet somehow the air still felt heavy. The mansion looked perfect. Gleaming marble floors, immaculate gardens trimmed by hired hands, but perfection had never been so quiet. The sound of laughter from the night before lingered like a ghost. James almost convinced himself he had imagined it. In the kitchen, Alia moved with calm precision, humming softly as she blended fruit into smoothies. She wasn't tiptoeing like a servant afraid to be heard. She worked as if she were repairing something invisible. "Banana, strawberry, blueberry," she said out loud, naming each fruit as she dropped it in. Her voice carried warmth, the kind that coaxed a response without demanding one. At the table sat Liam and Noah, small and cautious in their wheelchairs. Liam rubbed the corner of a baseball card between his fingers, while Noah peeled a sticker from his shirt and placed it neatly on the table. It was their quiet language, stickers for yes, silence for no. James watched from the counter, pretending to check his emails, but his eyes stayed on them. Alia poured 3 glasses of pink smoothie, placing one in front of each boy. "Let's see who dares first," she teased, her accent lilting like sunlight through blinds. Liam blinked at the straw, uncertain. Noah tipped his cup too far, spilling pink across the white marble. James's reflexes kicked in. He grabbed for paper towels, his jaw tightening, but before he could reach, Alia was already there, kneeling, not scolding, just signing with her hands. "It's okay. Try again." She wiped the spill gently, then added with a grin, "You know what that was? A brave attempt. Brave is messy sometimes." The boys giggled, softly, but it was laughter all the same. James froze mid-step. It had been months since he'd heard that sound twice in one day. The mansion had been built for grandeur, but not for life. The counters were too high for small arms, the elevator button too far to reach from a wheelchair, the piano in the music room locked beneath a layer of dust. Every inch of the home whispered control, not comfort. And now this woman, this stranger, was rearranging it one gentle act at a time. Later that morning, she rolled a box of crayons onto the kitchen island. "Color time, captains," she said. Noah chose a blue crayon and began to scribble waves, while Liam frowned at the paper as if it were a test he might fail. "What's that?" she asked. "A spaceship," he muttered. Alia's eyes softened. "That's perfect. Every astronaut starts with one line." From the doorway, James watched his sons draw for the first time since Emily's death. For a man who solved problems and algorithms, this scene didn't make sense. It wasn't therapy, it wasn't data. It was something far less measurable and far more alive. That night, Alia found a small notebook on the counter, a blank one from the drawer. She wrote the date on the first page. Day 1, they laughed twice. She didn't hide it. She left it right there beside the fruit bowl. The next morning, James saw it. He didn't write much, just 4 words in awkward, uneven letters. Today I heard hope. When Alia noticed his handwriting later, she smiled, traced her thumb over the ink, and drew a small heart beside it. No words, no flirtation, just acknowledgement, a shared understanding that something was waking up in this house. Over the next few days, she made quiet changes no architect could have planned. She lowered a shelf so the boys could reach their books. She moved the therapy charts from the fridge to a drawer and replaced them with the boys' crayon drawings. On one sheet, Noah had drawn a crooked star with the word home written beneath it, letters reversed, but readable. By the time the sun fell behind the Malibu cliffs, James realized something startling. For the first time in years, he didn't dread coming home. The house still held its ghosts. Emily's laughter on the piano, her perfume trapped in the hall, but there was warmth now too. The air no longer felt trapped inside the walls. It moved again, carrying traces of smoothie, crayons, and a woman who refused to tiptoe. He found himself standing at the edge of the pool again, staring at the reflection of the water. The boys were asleep upstairs, and Alia sat nearby folding towels, her reflection rippling on the surface. "You change things," he said quietly. She looked up. "Just trying to help them live here, not just survive." James hesitated. "And me?" Alia's lips curved. "You'll learn too, Mr. Carter. Houses don't breathe until the people inside them do." Her words lingered long after she left for the night. In the silence, James finally exhaled, and for the first time the house seemed to exhale with him. The laughter had returned, but something else was coming. The sound had traveled beyond the walls, reaching ears that didn't appreciate noise. 2 days later, the Carter mansion no longer sounded like a museum. There were small noises now. Smooth wheels rolling across tile, a blender at 8 a.m., a child's laugh echoing down the glass hallway. But in Malibu, sound travels fast, especially when it belongs to the wealthy who expect silence from everyone else. Across the hedge, Caroline Whitmore lifted her binoculars with the same precision she used to trim her roses. From her balcony, she had a perfect view of the Carter estate, the infinity pool, the manicured lawn, and the woman who, to her mind, didn't belong there. "She's in the pool again," Caroline murmured, her voice sharp as ice. "With those boys. And no lifeguard license, I bet." Her friend on the phone gasped. "James Carter? The tech investor?" "The same," Caroline said, lips curling. "He lost his wife, poor man. Now he's letting help run wild in his backyard." Caroline's world was built on order, scheduled Pilates, white wine lunches, and gossip disguised as concern. She didn't see a woman saving a family. She saw impropriety, a scandal, a story to tell over dinner. That same morning, James was inside the house reviewing investment reports when the sound of laughter drifted through the open doors again. He looked up from the screen. Liam was chasing a beach ball across the water with Alia's help, while Noah cheered from his wheelchair at the edge. "You're flying, Captain Liam." Alia shouted. "No, I'm floating." The boy giggled, throwing his arms wide. James smiled despite himself. For a moment he forgot balance sheets, forgot investors, forgot grief. He walked outside, letting the California sun hit his face for the first time in months. But the moment didn't last. From the corner of his eye he saw movement. The flicker of a camera flashed from the neighboring terrace. His stomach tightened. He knew Malibu's kind of charity. Kindness with strings, sympathy with gossip. That evening, as Alia dried the twins and helped them settle for dinner, James received a text from an unknown number. "Is it safe for your kids to be around the maid unsupervised?" He stared at the message until the letters blurred. Someone had crossed a line. Later that night, Alia found him in the kitchen, still holding his phone, shoulders tense. "Is something wrong?" she asked. James hesitated, torn between pride and fear. "Just neighbors being neighbors." She nodded slowly, her voice soft. "I grew up in a small town. Gossip there could kill faster than truth. But here," she said, motioning to the boys' crayon drawings taped to the fridge, "we've got proof of something real. Let them talk." He looked at her, caught between admiration and guilt. "You shouldn't have to deal with that." "I can handle talk," she said with quiet conviction. "What I can't handle is seeing those boys go back to silence." The next day, Caroline made 2 phone calls, one to the Homeowners Association and another to a friend whose husband worked at Child Protective Services. "I'm not trying to cause trouble," she said sweetly. But there's something happening in that house that doesn't seem safe. By sunset, a black SUV pulled into the Carter driveway. The boys were still in the pool, laughter spilling over the water. Alia turned when she heard the tires crunch the gravel. A man in a grey suit stepped out, clipboard in hand, expression calm but official. "Good evening," he said. "I'm Mr. Delgado, Child Services." The world seemed to still. James froze by the patio door. Alia blinked once, her heartbeat loud in her ears. The boys watched, confused, their laughter fading. "Sir," Delgado continued, "we've received a report regarding the children's safety during aquatic activity." Alia swallowed hard. "They're supervised, always." "I can see that," he replied, his tone measured. "But I'll still need to ask a few questions." The boys looked at her, eyes wide. Alia crouched down to their level, her tone steady. "Remember our game, captains. Ears open, truth steady." Mr. Delgado began with standard questions, her background, certifications, first aid training. Alia answered each one calmly. Her voice didn't shake. She explained her pediatric coursework, her CPR license, her experience assisting children with mobility conditions. When he turned to the boys, the room seemed to hold its breath. "Do you feel safe with Miss Alia?" Delgado asked. Liam nodded immediately. "She makes the days fun," Noah added quietly. "She makes the house not scary." Something shifted in the air. Delgado scribbled a note but didn't look up. He had seen plenty of cases, but few sounded like this, where children defended an adult with that kind of certainty. From the patio, Caroline watched through her lens, waiting for chaos. Instead, she saw a calm she couldn't understand. After the questions, Delgado handed James his card. This was a formality. "No violations here. You've got good kids. And good help." "Not help," James corrected softly. "She's the reason my sons laugh again." Delgado nodded once, understanding more than protocol required. "Then I'd keep her close, Mr. Carter. Joy attracts both angels and enemies." That night, after the SUV disappeared down the drive, James sat by the pool with Alia, the twins asleep upstairs. He ran a hand through his hair, frustration low in his throat. "You didn't sign up for this," he murmured. "None of us did," she replied. "But sometimes when people don't understand light, they call it danger." For the first time, James laughed, not out of humor but relief. "You're something else, Alia Johnson," she smiled faintly. "I'm just stubborn enough to believe broken things can breathe again." Neither of them noticed the storm clouds gathering over the ocean, the kind that roll in quietly before changing everything. That night, the ocean whispered warnings against the glass. Rain began to dot the terrace, soft at first, then harder, as thunder rolled in from somewhere beyond Santa Monica Bay. Inside, the twins slept upstairs, but James couldn't. His mind replayed the visit from Child Services, the calm professionalism of Mr. Delgado, the shame of having his home questioned. He wandered through the dim halls, barefoot on cold marble. Every light he passed flickered against the storm, until he stopped before the one door he never opened, the nursery. Behind it, the ghost of Emily Carter still sang in dust and memory. He stood there, one hand on the knob. But he couldn't turn it. Not yet. Downstairs, Alia was cleaning the kitchen when she heard a small sound, wheezing, then coughing. She hurried upstairs and found Noah flushed and trembling in his bed, his small hands pressed to his chest. She touched his forehead, hot as an ember. "Oh, sweetheart," she whispered. "How you've got a fever." She checked his temperature, 102.3. Nothing alarming yet, but enough to tighten her chest. She turned to fetch medicine when Noah's cracked voice stopped her. "Miss Alia," he murmured, eyes hazy, "can you sing the moon song?" She frowned gently. "The what?" "The one." "Mummy sang," her heart stumbled. "I don't know that song, honey." "It's in her room," he whispered. "The Song of the Moon." The words chilled her spine. That was the door she'd seen James avoid like a curse. But when she looked back at Noah, she saw fear there, fear and longing. He needed it, whatever it was. So she made a choice she didn't think twice about. Within minutes, Alia walked down the silent corridor, the thunder low and rhythmic beyond the glass. She reached the end of the hall where the nursery waited. The handle was cool beneath her fingers. The door creaked open with a sigh, as if exhaling after years of holding its breath. Dust shimmered in her flashlight beam. Tiny socks still hung from a clothesline over the dresser. The air smelled of lilac and paper, and on the old piano, under a layer of grey, sat a folded sheet of music titled in fading ink, Moon Lullaby. Her throat tightened. She lifted it carefully, brushing away the dust. The notes were simple, soft, like something a mother might hum to keep the dark away. Minutes later, she returned to Noah's bedside. Liam had woken, watching quietly. Alia sat between them, holding the fragile paper, her voice low. "I don't know the tune exactly," she admitted, "but maybe if we listen close enough, she'll teach us." She began to hum, hesitant at first, then steadier, the melody simple and aching. "I'll find you on the moon where the stars fall asleep and the sea forgets to roar." The boy's eyelids fluttered. Liam reached for Noah's hand. The fever seemed to ease bit by bit, like the house itself was breathing again. That's when James appeared at the door. His face was pale, eyes wide, as if he'd seen a ghost. He whispered, "How did you find that?" Alia didn't stop singing. She only nodded toward the piano sheet still in her lap. When the last note faded, she folded it neatly and placed it in his trembling hands. "Your son remembered it," she said quietly. "I just borrowed it for a while." James stood there for a long time. He hadn't heard that melody in years, not since Emily's voice filled this same room, soothing the twins to sleep. He had avoided it because remembering hurt more than forgetting. Now, standing in the doorway, he realized forgetting had cost him everything. "Emily wrote that," he murmured. "She said it was for nights when they couldn't sleep. Or when she couldn't." He looked down at the paper in his hands, then back at Alia. "You shouldn't have gone in there." "I know," she said softly. "But grief isn't meant to stay locked up, Mr. Carter. It suffocates everyone around it." Something in him broke, not violently, but quietly, like ice thawing. His eyes dropped to the sheet again, and for the first time he didn't turn away. "Come with me," he said after a moment. He led her down the hall, back into the nursery. The storm outside flashed white against the windows. The piano's wood was cracked, one key chipped, but it still looked alive somehow. James sat. His fingers hovered above the keys, trembling. "I might not remember all of it," he said. "That's okay," Alia whispered. "It doesn't have to be perfect." He pressed the first note, then another. The melody stumbled, faltered, found its footing. Alia joined in quietly, her hum threading between the notes like breath between words. Together they brought the song back. Not as Emily had played it, but as the house needed to hear it now. Broken, imperfect, but full of life. When the final note lingered, James bowed his head, eyes wet but unashamed. Alia didn't speak. She simply turned off the lamp beside the piano, leaving only the moonlight to finish the song. Outside, the storm began to fade, leaving behind a strange, fragile calm. For the first time in 3 years, the nursery door stayed open, and somewhere deep in the house, grief loosened its grip, just enough for hope to take its first breath. But as peace returned, new eyes were watching. Caroline Whitmore, restless in her window, had seen Alia walking the hall late at night, the light in the nursery flickering back to life. To her it looked like intrusion. To her it looked like trouble. The next storm, she promised herself, would not be weather. It would be war. The following morning dawned clear, the kind of Malibu light that made even grief look softer. Yet James Carter felt the weight of something heavier than the night before. The melody of Moon Lullaby still echoed in his mind. It wasn't haunting anymore, but it left behind a strange ache. When he came down to breakfast, Alia was already there, helping Liam and Noah with their cereal. The boys hummed fragments of the lullaby between spoonfuls, their little voices rising and falling in imperfect harmony. It was messy, chaotic, alive. "Good morning, Mr. Carter," Alia greeted, her voice calm but bright. "Looks like the captains had a better night," he smiled faintly. "They did." "So did I." She noticed the piano sheet in his hand. "You kept it," she said. He nodded. "Emily wrote it. But last night it felt like—" "She gave it back." Alia's eyes softened. Maybe she was just waiting for someone brave enough to open the door again. Before James could answer, the front doorbell rang, sharp, formal, and uninvited. When he opened it, a man in a crisp white coat stood on the doorstep. His silver hair was perfectly combed, his clipboard pressed like a shield against his chest. Behind him, Caroline Whitmore lingered with a polite, poisonous smile. "Good morning," the man said smoothly. "I'm Dr. William Huxley. I was contacted by Mrs. Whitmore. She was concerned about your children's recent changes in behavior." James's stomach turned. "Their behavior?" Caroline chimed in sweetly. "James, dear, I only wanted to help. After all, trauma can be unpredictable, and that girl you hired seems, well, unorthodox." Alia appeared behind him, holding a towel, her expression composed but wary. "Is there a problem?" Dr. Huxley gave her a tight smile. "Not at all, Miss Johnson. I simply specialize in pediatric recovery and wanted to ensure these children are receiving proper care." James crossed his arms. "I already have a therapist for them." "Of course," Huxley said smoothly. "But when neighbors report late-night disturbances, unlocked nurseries, and unsupervised pool sessions—" His voice trailed, letting accusation hang in the air. Caroline feigned concern. "We all just want what's best for the boys, James." The twins peeked around the corner, watching the scene unfold. Noah whispered, "Is that man mad at Miss Alia?" Liam frowned. "He looks like the people from the hospital." James turned to Huxley, irritation seeping through. "You've had your look. My sons are safe." But Huxley wasn't finished. "Safe isn't the same as stable, Mr. Carter. Children with trauma need structure, not spontaneous interventions from someone with no formal credentials." Alia took a slow breath. "I may not have a PhD, doctor, but I've cared for children who stopped talking, who stopped smiling, who were drowning long before they ever saw a pool. You can call it unorthodox if you want, but it's working." Her voice stayed level, but her eyes burned. Huxley tilted his head, amused. "Working? You're a maid, not a miracle worker." The words struck harder than he intended. James saw Alia's hand tighten around the towel. Before he could step in, Noah rolled forward in his chair, face flushed with anger. "She's not a maid. She's our friend." The room fell silent. Caroline's eyes darted, her polite mask faltering. Dr. Huxley blinked, unprepared for the small voice challenging him. James crouched beside Noah, steadying him. "It's all right, buddy." He looked up at the doctor, his tone colder now. "You're finished here." Huxley adjusted his glasses. "I'll make a note of your hostility. For the report." James's jaw tightened. "Make sure you spell happiness right when you file it." The doctor hesitated, caught between pride and prudence. He finally nodded stiffly and turned to leave. Caroline followed, her voice brittle as glass. "I only wanted to protect you, James." "From what?" he asked, his voice rising. "From laughter?" Her face reddened, but she said nothing. When the door shut behind them, Alia exhaled slowly, her composure cracking for the first time. "I'm sorry, Mr. Carter, I didn't mean to cause trouble." James shook his head. "You didn't. They did." He walked to the living room window, staring out at the restless sea. "Malibu looks beautiful from far away, but people forget. It's built on fault lines. The ground here shifts when you least expect it." That evening, the house was quieter than usual. Alia sat by the pool, watching the reflection of the moon on the water. James joined her with 2 mugs of tea. For a while they said nothing. Finally, Alia spoke. "He's going to make things hard for you." "For us," James nodded. "I've faced worse from boardrooms than I'll ever face from that man." "But I can handle it," she said softly. "I've been the outsider before." He turned toward her, studying her profile in the moonlight. "Why do you stay, Alia? You could find work anywhere." She looked at the glowing water, her reflection fractured by ripples. "Because those boys remind me of someone I once was, waiting for someone to believe I could laugh again." The wind carried the faint scent of lilac, and James realized it wasn't Emily's perfume anymore. It was something new, something alive. He didn't know it yet, but this night would mark a turning point, because while they sat beneath the silver Malibu moon, a quiet decision was forming inside him, one that would risk his reputation, his peace, and everything he thought he understood about grief. A decision to choose life again, even if it meant defying the ghosts of his past. The week after Dr. Huxley's visit began calm, deceptively so. The sun glimmered on the ocean, and the mansion for once seemed to hum with rhythm again. Yet beneath that peace, something restless was building, like the air before a summer storm. James Carter spent most mornings in his office, pretending to work, but the spreadsheets blurred into lines of meaningless numbers. His mind kept drifting toward the laughter that came from outside, the twins and Alia in the garden, chasing bubbles, voices rising like music. He wanted to join them, but guilt held him back. How could he laugh when Emily couldn't? Downstairs, Alia was setting up the twins' art session. "Okay, captains," she said with her bright grin. "Today we draw dreams. Not what you see, but what you want to see." Liam tilted his head. "Like a wish?" "Exactly," she said, laying down crayons. "Every wish starts as a color." Noah picked up a green crayon and began drawing circles. "I want to swim without help someday." Alia's heart softened. "You will. Maybe not in the ocean, but one day the water will listen to you." Liam drew a house. But his version was different, smaller, cozier, with 3 stick figures outside and a 4th drawn slightly apart. "That's Mommy," he whispered. Alia knelt beside him. "And where's Daddy?" Liam hesitated. "He's behind the window, watching." The answer hit her harder than she expected. For all the mansion's beauty, the children saw it the same way she did. A house full of glass and distance. That evening, the air shifted. Clouds rolled in fast over the Pacific, dark and wide, swallowing the sun. The power flickered once, then twice. James walked into the living room, frowning. "Storm's moving quick. I'll check the generator." "Be careful," Alia said, gathering the boys' art supplies. They said it might flood near the cliffs. Minutes later, thunder cracked, shaking the windows. The boys startled, their eyes darting to Alia. "It's just the sky talking," she assured them. "Come on, let's wait in the elevator. I'll take you to your room. It's safest upstairs." They wheeled inside, clutching their sketch pads, while Alia pressed the button. The doors slid shut, the hum of motion starting. Then a loud snap echoed through the house. The lights died. The elevator jerked and froze between floors. "Miss Alia," Noah whispered. Why did it stop? Her pulse quickened. She pressed the emergency button. Nothing. Only silence and the low rumble of thunder outside. "Okay," she said slowly, forcing calm into her voice. "We're safe. Just stuck for a bit." Liam's hands began to shake. "I don't like the dark." "I know, baby," she said softly. "But remember what we do when we're scared?" He nodded faintly. "We count down?" "That's right," she said. 3, 2, 1. Her voice cracked slightly, but she caught herself, steadying it. "Now what happens next?" Noah whispered. "We launch," she smiled. "Exactly." The boys began counting again, louder this time, pretending the elevator was their rocket ship. But between their laughter, she could hear her own heartbeat hammering in her chest. The air was getting warm, heavy. Downstairs, James returned from the basement generator, soaked from rain, realizing something was wrong. The lights were out and Alia's voice, usually steady and musical, was missing. "Alia," he shouted. "Boys?" Nothing. He ran through the hallways, searching every room until a faint thud came from inside the elevator shaft. "Oh, God." He slammed the panel. "Alia, can you hear me?" Inside, her heart leapt at his voice. "We're here. The elevator's stuck." "Are the boys okay?" "Yes, but the power's out. We can't see anything." James ran to the control cabinet, forcing the emergency crank open. "Hold on, I'm getting you out." Thunder roared above the house as he turned the crank. Metal screeched, the cables shifted, but not enough. Sweat dripped down his neck, mixing with rain. He slammed his fist against the wall. Come on, come on." Inside, Alia tried to keep the boys calm. "Hey," she whispered, "let's play the moon song." Liam whimpered. "It's too dark." "Then we'll make our own light," she said, tapping the side rail with her knuckle, marking the rhythm. Her voice filled the cramped space. "I'll find you on the moon where the stars fall asleep." The boys joined, shaky but brave. Their voices grew stronger, echoing off the steel walls until even the thunder seemed to pause to listen. Upstairs, James could hear it faintly through the vents, the melody of Emily's lullaby. His breath caught in his throat. The sound carried like a prayer through the bones of the house. Then, with one final wrench of the lever, the power snapped back. Lights flickered. The elevator jerked, then descended smoothly to the ground floor. When the doors slid open, Alia stood holding both boys close. Her face was streaked with tears and sweat, her hair damp, her arms trembling, but she was smiling. James froze in the doorway, breathless. "Are you okay?" Alia nodded weakly. "We sang through the dark." He looked at her, really looked, and for the first time saw not an employee, not even a caregiver, but the anchor holding his family together. Without thinking, He stepped forward and pulled her into a brief, shaking hug. The twins, still clinging to her sides, giggled in relief. "We landed, Daddy," Noah whispered. "We made it to the moon." James laughed softly, his voice rough. "You sure did, Captain." Outside, the rain began to fade. The power hummed back through the house, and though the storm had passed, something inside all of them had shifted permanently. That night, when the boys finally fell asleep, James walked to the window and looked at the glowing reflection of the pool. The storm had stirred up leaves and petals, but the surface was still shimmering with light, moonlight like a promise kept. He whispered to the quiet, "Thank you, Emily, for sending her." What James didn't see was Caroline Whitmore, again standing at her window, her lips pressed thin. She'd seen everything. James holding Alia, the lights flickering back to life, the tenderness that didn't fit her version of order, and in her mind, mercy was just another word for scandal. By morning, she'd make another call. This time, not to Dr. Huxley. This time to someone with the power to take everything away. Morning came dressed in false peace. The storm had rinsed the Malibu sky clean, leaving everything bright and deceivingly calm. The sea glittered, the air smelled of salt and lilac, and for a moment it almost seemed as if the night before had never happened. But trouble, like grief, doesn't vanish with sunlight. It hides behind it. Alia stood in the kitchen, folding the boys' damp pajamas, when she noticed the quiet. Too quiet. No laughter, no sound of wheels against tile. Her heart dropped. She followed the silence and found James standing at the front door, his jaw tense, his eyes locked on two uniformed men. Between them stood Mr. Delgado, the child services officer, his expression unreadable. "Good morning, Mr. Carter," Delgado began gently. "I'm afraid we've received another complaint." James's voice was sharp. "From Caroline Whitmore?" Delgado hesitated. "Anonymous, technically. But the report is—" "Serious this time?" Alia appeared behind him. "What kind of report?" The officer sighed. "Allegations of misconduct. That you endangered the children during last night's power outage." Alia blinked, stunned. "Endangered?" "We were stuck in the elevator. We sang to keep them calm." "I believe you," Delgado said, lowering his tone. "But the system doesn't move on belief. I have to follow procedure. That means interviews, and possibly a temporary removal order." The world tilted. James stepped forward. "Absolutely not. My children aren't going anywhere." Delgado looked pained. "Please, James, let me do my job. The sooner we complete the process, the sooner this ends." Behind him, the second officer approached Alia. "Miss Johnson, we'll need you to come with us for questioning." She froze. "Questioning?" "It's standard," he said. "You'll be free to return once we verify the details." Noah, who had been sitting at the dining table, rolled forward in his chair, eyes wide. "Why are they taking her?" Liam clutched his brother's sleeve. "She didn't do anything." The officers exchanged awkward glances. Delgado knelt in front of them, his voice calm but heavy. "Hey, captains. This isn't forever. We just need to make sure everything's okay." James's voice broke through, controlled but furious. "You were here, Delgado. You saw. You know she saved them." "I do," Delgado said. "But someone powerful is pushing this higher. Dr. Huxley submitted a formal statement to the board last night." Alia felt her knees weaken. "What did he say?" "That you exposed the children to unsafe environments, encouraged emotional dependency, and overstepped your professional boundaries." The accusation burned like acid. She wanted to defend herself, to shout, but the words caught in her throat. Noah began to cry. "Don't take her, please." Delgado's eyes softened. "I'll do everything I can to fix this. But for now." He looked at James. "I'm sorry." James clenched his fists. "You'll regret this." "I already do," Delgado murmured. The officers led Alia outside. Caroline Whitmore stood on her porch, arms crossed, feigning surprise. "Oh dear," she called out, her tone dripping sugar. "Such a shame. I hope it all gets sorted soon." Alia didn't look at her. She kept her chin high, though her eyes shimmered with tears. Before stepping into the car, she turned toward the boys at the window and raised her hand. The same open palm gesture she'd given them in the pool. "It's okay. Be brave." Inside the mansion, silence returned like a punishment. The twins refused to eat. James sat on the stairs, his head in his hands, the echo of her voice still circling the rooms. He remembered what she had said weeks earlier. Houses don't breathe until the people inside them do. Now the air felt heavy again, stale, suffocating. He called Delgado that afternoon. "Where is she?" "At the county office for questioning. It'll take a few hours," Delgado replied. "But I'll be honest, James, Dr. Huxley's influence is strong. He's claiming professional negligence. They might revoke her license to work with children." James slammed his hand against the wall. "She's not a liability. She's the reason my sons smile." "I know," Delgado said. "But they don't measure smiles, James. They measure paperwork." When he hung up, James went straight to his study, pulling open the drawer where Emily's letters were kept. He hadn't read them since the funeral, but now he needed something, anything, to remind him what mattered. The last envelope, sealed and yellowed, read simply, "For when you forget how to hear laughter." Inside, Emily's familiar handwriting curved across the page. "If you ever lock yourself inside grief, promise me you'll let someone open the door. Someone who isn't me. Someone alive." His breath hitched. He stood abruptly, grabbed his coat, and called the only person who might listen. "Delgado," he said when the man answered. "You said this was about paperwork." "Then I'll bring them proof." By evening, James arrived at the county building. He found Alia in a small grey room, her eyes red but unbroken. When she saw him, she tried to stand, but he shook his head. "Don't say a word," he told the investigator. "You want evidence?" "You'll have it." He placed a small drive on the table. "Security footage from my home. It shows the storm, the elevator, the moment she saved my children." The investigator exchanged a look with Delgado, who had just arrived. "You're not supposed to have private surveillance on—" "I own the system," James interrupted. "Play it." The footage rolled. Flickering lights, Alia keeping calm, her voice steady, the boys singing, her holding them close until the doors opened. Not one frame of negligence, only courage. When the clip ended, silence filled the room. Delgado broke it first. "I think that settles it." The investigator nodded reluctantly. "Miss Johnson, you're free to go." Alia's shoulders sagged. She looked at James, eyes glassy. "You didn't have to." "Yes, I did," he said softly. "Because you saved them. And maybe you saved me too." Outside, the Malibu sunset bled orange over the ocean. The air smelled of rain and freedom. But something in James's gut told him it wasn't over. Caroline Whitmore wouldn't let go that easily. And Dr. Huxley, his type, didn't lose quietly. That night, as they drove back to the mansion, Alia turned to James. "They'll come after you next." He gripped the wheel, eyes on the horizon. "Then let them. They can have my reputation, but they'll never take my family again." Behind them, in the fading light, the Whitmore house glowed like a watchful eye, waiting for its next move. The next morning came pale and windless, the kind of Malibu dawn that hides exhaustion behind its beauty. The Carter mansion sat calm under the sun, but inside the air was tight, like a string pulled too far. Alia had returned, but the house didn't feel normal again. There was tension under every smile, a fear that at any moment the peace could vanish, because they all knew Caroline Whitmore and Dr. Huxley were not finished. James stood by the window, sipping coffee that had long gone cold. From there he could see the Whitmore estate, the manicured hedges, the perfectly parked car, the woman in pastel silk who spent her mornings pretending to prune roses while feeding poison to anyone who'd listen. Alia appeared behind him, voice quiet but steady. "You haven't slept," he shook his head. "I keep thinking about the system. How people like Caroline twist it to feel powerful." "She's not powerful," Alia said softly, just loud. He turned, managing a small smile. "You really think this will die down?" "I think truth lasts longer than gossip," she replied, "but we might have to fight for it." Upstairs, the twins were awake early, their giggles echoing down the hall. They were drawing again, this time rockets and waves and a woman in a red dress holding hands with two little astronauts. When Alia saw the picture, her chest tightened. "Who's that?" she asked. Liam grinned. "You, but you're part of the crew now." Noah nodded seriously. "Yeah, Daddy said you're not going anywhere." She smiled, swallowing the lump in her throat. "Then I better earn my place." That afternoon, James took the twins for a drive along the coast, hoping to give them a sense of normalcy. Alia stayed behind to tidy the kitchen, but as she walked past the open laptop on the counter, A sharp notification flashed across the screen. A news alert. Her stomach dropped as she read the headline, "Tech philanthropist James Carter, under investigation for child endangerment allegations." Her hands trembled. Beneath it was a photo. The security footage Dr. Huxley must have leaked. The image froze her mid-frame inside the elevator, holding both boys as the lights flickered out. But the caption twisted the truth. Untrained caregiver trapped 2 disabled minors during blackout incident. She felt the blood drain from her face. James returned hours later to find her staring at the screen. "What is that?" he demanded. She turned it toward him silently. He read the headline once, twice, then slammed the laptop shut. "Sir Huxley, he's trying to ruin me." "And me," she said softly. "This could follow me forever." Before he could speak, his phone buzzed again. A message from his lawyer. "Press requests incoming. If you don't distance yourself from her, they'll destroy your company." He looked at Alia, torn between fury and fear. "They're going to use you to get to me." "Then let them," she said quietly. "But don't let them take the boy's laughter again." He ran a hand through his hair. "I can't lose them." "Not again." "Then fight," she whispered. Not with anger, with truth. But the media storm built faster than either of them expected. By the next morning, vans lined the front gate. Cameras flashed through the fence. Every headline told a version of the story that wasn't theirs. Words like reckless, unstable, and unfit father filled the feeds. Inside, the twins hid in their room, confused and scared. Liam clutched his sketchbook. "Why are they saying you're bad, Miss Alia?" She knelt beside him. "Because some people don't like when light shines where they can't control it." That afternoon, there was a knock at the door. James opened it to find Mr. Delgado again, this time without a smile. "I had to come," he said. "There's pressure from above. They're asking for a second evaluation." James's voice dropped.
"Meaning?"
"Meaning Dr. Huxley is pushing for temporary foster care until your case clears." Alia's breath hitched. "They can't. The boys are safe here." "I know," Delgado said quietly. "But if you both stand together, it'll look like collusion. If you separate and even temporarily, it might buy us time." James stared at him. "You're asking me to send her away?" Delgado's eyes softened. "To protect her. And your sons." The silence that followed felt endless. Alia finally spoke first. "He's right." "No," James said instantly. "James," she said, stepping closer, her voice trembling. "If I stay, they'll twist this until they win. But if I leave now, just for a while, it might calm down." Liam's voice came from the stairs. "You can't go." Noah's eyes filled with tears. "We didn't laugh before you came." Alia knelt down, holding both their hands. "And you'll keep laughing, okay? Every day. Because that's how you fight the dark." James's throat tightened. "You're asking me to let you walk away after saving us. I'm asking you to trust that the story's not over yet." The next morning, before dawn, Alia packed a single suitcase. James stood by the doorway, trying to memorize her face. "Where will you go?" "Back home, Georgia. My grandmother's house still smells like bread and rain. Maybe that's where I need to remember who I am." He nodded slowly, fighting to keep his voice steady. "If you ever need anything," she cut him off gently. "I already have everything that matters. 2 brave captains and a father who finally breathes again." The taxi pulled away as the first rays of sun touched the Pacific. The house behind her looked smaller in the distance, its glass walls gleaming with a fragile kind of peace. Inside, James stood alone at the window. The twins slept upstairs, their drawings taped to the walls and rockets, moons, and one picture of Alia holding their hands under a smiling sun. He whispered into the quiet, "We'll bring her back," but he didn't know that. Miles away in a dim cafe off the Malibu highway, Dr. Huxley was meeting with Caroline Whitmore. The doctor's face was calm, but his eyes gleamed with something colder. "She's out of the picture," Caroline said, sipping her coffee. "For now," Huxley nodded. "And soon James Carter will realize that grief isn't his only enemy." 3 months passed. Summer melted into a gentler fall, and the Carter mansion, once filled with warmth and laughter, grew still again. The pool sat untouched. The boys' drawings faded in the sunlight. Even the sound of the ocean seemed quieter, as if the waves themselves had gone into mourning. James had thrown himself into work, trying to drown out the noise. The scandal had cooled. The headlines had shifted to some new story, but the damage lingered. Investors were cautious. Whispers followed him everywhere, and the boys, they smiled less. Every night he walked down the hallway toward their rooms, stopping at the door that used to echo with giggles and bedtime songs. Inside, Liam and Noah were awake, whispering to each other under the covers. "Do you think she'll come back?" Liam asked. "She promised," Noah said, his voice small but certain. "And she doesn't break promises." James leaned his head against the wall, closing his eyes. He wanted to tell them she would, but even he wasn't sure anymore. Downstairs he sat in the kitchen, the same spot where Alia used to hum while making smoothies. On the fridge, the photo she'd taken at the beach still hung, the boys laughing with crowns of cardboard and sunburned noses. Beneath it, a small note in her handwriting read, "Joy is a muscle. Use it or it forgets." He stared at the words until his vision blurred. He missed her. Not just her presence, but the way she made the house breathe. Meanwhile, hundreds of miles away in Georgia, Alia Johnson lived quietly. Her grandmother's house was small, wrapped in magnolia trees and cicadas' song. Each morning she woke early, brewed tea and checked her phone for messages that never came. She'd tried to move on, taking small caregiving jobs for local families, but none of them were like the Carters. None of them had laughter that healed like that. She'd even tried writing to the twins, letters she never sent. Each one began with "To my brave captains" and ended with "Keep floating even when it's dark." One evening, while sorting through boxes, she found the old notebook she'd left half-filled at the Carter house. On the first page she'd written, "We start where the silence breaks." She smiled faintly. Then beneath it she added a new line, "Sometimes the silence follows you until you face it." That night the decision came quietly but firmly. She was going back. Not to reclaim anything, but to return what was unfinished. Back in Malibu, James Carter was losing the last pieces of his patience. The boy's latest therapist, one of Huxley's recommendations, had arrived that afternoon carrying charts and condescension. "They're regressing," the therapist said bluntly. "Minimal progress in speech, limited engagement. Perhaps the environment has become too emotionally unstable." James clenched his jaw. "You mean I've become too unstable?" "I'm saying," the therapist replied, "children sense unresolved grief. They mimic it." The words hit harder than he wanted to admit. After the session, James went out to the backyard, standing by the still pool. The reflection staring back at him looked older, heavier. He whispered, "Emily, I'm failing them." He didn't expect an answer, but he got one. From inside the house, a faint melody drifted through the air. The moon song. His heart stopped. That song hadn't been played since the storm night. He rushed inside him and froze. There, sitting at the piano, was Liam, his small hands trembling over the keys. Noah sat beside him, whispering the lyrics, "I'll find you on the moon where the sky holds its breath." James's eyes filled. "Who taught you that?" Liam looked up shyly. "Miss Alia did. We remembered it. We thought if we sang it she might hear." James's throat closed. In that moment something shifted. The guilt, the silence, the weight of everything. He realized grief hadn't stolen his children's joy. Fear had. The next morning he made a decision. He called Mr. Delgado. "I'm done letting them decide how we live. File whatever paperwork you need. I'm reopening every case, every false report. Caroline Whitmore, Huxley. I want them exposed." Delgado paused, stunned. "That's a fight that won't be easy." "I don't need easy," James said. "I just need the truth." Meanwhile, Caroline was already unraveling. Word had spread that her concerns about the Carter family were fabricated. Neighbors whispered, friends distanced themselves. Even her husband had left for Palm Springs to clear his head. And Dr. Huxley, the man's arrogance became his undoing. A leaked email from his assistant revealed that he'd falsified parts of his testimony to the board, claiming to have witnessed negligence he never saw. Within days, his license was under review, but James wasn't interested in revenge, he wanted healing. And there was only one person who could finish what they'd started. That evening, after putting the twins to bed, he sat at his desk and wrote a letter. The first line came easily. "You once told me that joy is a muscle. I think we've all been forgetting how to use it without you." He sealed it, stamped it, and mailed it to a small address in Savannah, Georgia. A week later, under the soft southern rain, Alia found the envelope waiting on her grandmother's porch. Her hands shook as she opened it. Inside was the photo from the beach, but this time there was something new written across the bottom in James's uneven handwriting. "Come home." They're still laughing, and so am I, her eyes filled with tears. The horizon blurred, but one thing was clear. It was time to go back. She looked toward the storm-colored sky and whispered, "All right, captains, let's launch again." And for the first time in months, she laughed, a sound that carried through the magnolias and up toward the clouds, as if the universe itself had been waiting to exhale. The letter took 5 days to reach Savannah and less than 1 to change everything. By the following week, Alia Johnson was back on the Pacific Coast Highway, the old rental car humming beneath her hands as the Malibu cliffs rose in the distance. The sky stretched wide and golden, the same color it had been the day she'd first arrived, but this time she wasn't nervous. She wasn't hired help returning to a job. She was coming home. When she turned into the long driveway of the Carter estate, she stopped for a moment. The mansion gleamed under the afternoon sun, but it looked different, softer somehow. The tall glass windows no longer mirrored emptiness. They reflected movement, color, and life. The sound of laughter, unmistakably their laughter, reached her even before she parked. She barely had time to step out before the front door burst open. "Miss Alia." The twins' voices hit her like a wave. Noah's chair rolled faster than was safe, Liam close behind. Both boys threw their arms around her before she could even kneel. "You came back," Noah shouted. Liam grinned so wide it almost hurt to look at him. "We told Daddy you would. We sang the song every night so you'd hear us." Alia laughed through her tears. "And I did. I heard you all the way from Georgia." Behind them, James Carter appeared at the doorway. He looked different too, less polished, more human. The suit was gone. He wore a simple shirt, sleeves rolled, a smudge of blue paint on his hand. There was tiredness in his face, but the kind that comes from living, not surviving. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then he said quietly, "You came back." Alia smiled. "You invited me home." He stepped closer. "It hasn't been home without you." Before she could reply, the twins tugged at her hands. Come see what we built." They led her through the hallway, down to the old nursery, the one that once smelled like dust and silence. When she entered, she froze. The walls were no longer pale and lifeless. They were painted a soft blue, dusted with hundreds of glow-in-the-dark stars. Paper planets hung from the ceiling. Their small piano stood in the corner, surrounded by drawings and crayon-smeared constellations. Above the door, painted in silver letters, were the words, "The Launch Room." Her breath caught. "You turned it into a sky," James nodded. "The boys designed it. Said it needed to feel like the place where everything begins." Liam pointed to the wall near the light switch. 4 handprints were pressed there. 2 small, 1 medium, 1 large, each outlined in different colors. Beneath them, scrawled in black marker, were the names Liam, Noah, Alia, James. She touched the wall, tracing her name. "You kept my place. We never stopped saving it," Noah said proudly. James watched her, voice soft but steady. "When you left, I thought I was protecting you. But the truth is, you were the one protecting us. You made this house alive again. You made me alive again." She turned toward him, emotion tightening her throat. "And you reminded me what family means. It's not who hires you. It's who fights for you." The twins began clapping their hands in rhythm. "Sing the song, Miss Alia. Sing it again." Alia laughed and shook her head, tears glistening. "All right, captains." One last time. James sat beside the piano, hands hovering uncertainly over the keys. She nodded to him. "Together." He began to play, slow and imperfect, but honest. Alia's voice rose above the melody, the same lullaby that had once soothed fear in a dark elevator. "I'll find you on the moon, where the sky holds its breath and love keeps its promise beyond life and death." The boys joined in, giggling between verses. By the final note, the whole house seemed to hum. Every wall, every window, every memory. The air felt lighter, like something long buried had finally been set free. Outside, the sun slid behind the horizon, scattering gold over the ocean. Caroline Whitmore's house sat dark and silent now. Her kingdom of perfection had crumbled beneath her own bitterness. Dr. Huxley's license had been officially revoked, his name erased from the clinic's door. And Mr. Delgado, standing quietly by his car across the street, smiled to himself before driving away. Justice at last had chosen the right side. Later that evening, James found Alia by the pool, the same pool where everything had begun. The water shimmered silver under the moonlight. He walked over slowly. "Do you remember that first night, when I stood right here watching you with them?" She smiled faintly. "Oh, you looked terrified." "I was, because I'd forgotten what hope sounded like." He hesitated, then reached into his pocket. "The boys and I made something for you." He handed her a small photo frame, the beach picture now encased in wood polished by hand. Beneath it, written in 4 uneven handwritings, were the words, "We started together. We stay together." Tears slipped down her cheeks. "You didn't have to—" "Yes," he interrupted gently. "We did." For a long while they stood in silence, the kind that didn't hurt anymore. The pool lights flickered, reflecting their faces, a family that had learned how to breathe again. Then Liam's voice rang out from inside. "Dad, Miss Alia, we're doing the stars again." She laughed. "That's our cue, Captain Carter." James smiled. "After you, Commander Johnson." They walked back into the house hand in hand. And as the camera of the story slowly pulled away, past the glowing windows, past the garden, past the endless Pacific, the laughter rose again, clear and real, cutting through the night like a promise fulfilled. Because sometimes a miracle doesn't arrive in a blaze of light. Sometimes it walks into your home, opens the windows, and simply teaches you how to breathe again. This was the story of James, Alia, and 2 little boys who remembered how to laugh. A story about loss, healing, and the courage to start again. I'm John Parker, and if this story touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe to Invisible Hearts and leave a like. It means more than you know. Tell me in the comments from which city or country you're listening today, so our stories can reach even more hearts around the world. Until next time, remember, even in silence, love never stops speaking.